What's up, people? This is the Bleav in Saints podcast, and I am Mario Jerez, Spanish play-by-play voice of the Saints, native New Orleanian, member of the Saints Hall of Fame Media Selection Committee. She is my co-host, Erin Summers, seasoned reporter and analyst covering the Saints and the NFL as a whole. What's up, Erin? Really enjoying doing the show with you so far. How you doing this morning?
I am doing great. We are in a really fun time of the season because, yes, the new season is here. We've gotten to talk to the rookies. We're going to be back at OTAs on the 27th. So we'll be able to see some of these players back on the field that we haven't seen yet, some of the vets, and then see what they're building here in year two.
Lots to discuss. A lot of newness, a lot of veteran players, maybe or maybe not coming back. There's a lot to discuss when it comes to New Orleans Saints. And that's what we'll do today here on Bleav in Saints. We'll talk about the speculation on Alvin Kamara's future in New Orleans, maybe outside of New Orleans. We'll see. Mickey Loomis also had a lot of honest words about Taysom Hill, the status of Cameron Jordan. And we heard from one Tyler Shough for the first time since the NFL draft. So very excited to get into all of that, Erin. And in my opinion, as we get into some of this Mickey Loomis sound that you cut up, he was really honest yesterday. And he seems to be really honest this offseason, especially when it comes to contracts and the status of players, their futures, and stuff like that. And of course, this entire dialogue was going to start with Alvin Kamara and his ongoing situation in New Orleans. Here's what General Manager Mickey Loomis had to say on AK.
We're just trying to see how he's going to fit in our roster, and obviously there's a resource management element to it, and we'll get to that over the next week or two.
Does he currently have a decision to make on like a revamped contract or something?
No, not currently. No.
So with OTAs starting next week, is that a deadline to try and figure out who's on the roster? And who's not?
That creates a little bit of a deadline, yes, but it's not hard and fast.
And you mentioned resource management. Is that about the contract?
Yeah, sure, certainly, yeah. But how we manage our cap, and we'll get to that.
Mickey, is there anything new on Cam or Taysom possibly returning?
No, nothing new.
Does it become unlikely as you get this far into the offseason?
No, I don't think so. Look, those guys, have earned the right for self-determination, right? So we're not going to put any deadlines on anything.
Do they both have contract offers from you?
Cam certainly does. Taysom does not.
Excellent journalism by my man Les East there, by the way. Just kept prodding and eventually was straight up just like, do they have contract offers? And you heard Mickey's answer. What were your thoughts on what he said?
I mean, it was very honest and open of Mickey Loomis to actually address that in the way that he did, because it's the first time he's actually given us definitive answers on Cam Jordan's status, where that stands, Taysom Hill, and then even giving me some insight into Alvin Kamara. Cam Jordan has been such a key piece of the Saints defense and the community here in New Orleans since the day he was drafted. Yes, he is going into his 37th year on this earth. So yeah, a little bit older, but he definitely is still productive. 10.5 sacks last season. And I think that Cam wants to feel valued for what he thinks that he still brings to the table. And he definitely did that last season with the way he contributed defensively. He wanted, I would assume, wanted to kind of see what his options were out there, see maybe if he could get a better offer on the table. But I don't think he wants to leave New Orleans per se. He's talked a lot about how his father played all of his career at one place with the Minnesota Vikings. It's something that Cam Jordan said that he would like to do as well. So it's just trying to come to terms on what that looks like, maybe the number and opportunity, I think, is big for Jordan as well. He wants to play. He still feels like he can, and he wants to be I don't want to say guaranteed, but told there's going to be opportunity for him to really get into the rotation there on the defensive line.
Especially coming off the season he just had. I mean, double-digit sacks, not just being a veteran leader, which you just did a great job breaking down how he does that, but the production is still there, and I feel like Cam feels a little bit slighted. But I want to take this one at a time here, Erin, because he talked about Alvin, he talked about Taysom Hill, and he talked about Cameron Jordan. And obviously, I think the most important player in this equation is Alvin Kamara. And I understand why, similar to how you were talking about with Cam, fans get emotional when talking
Mhm.
about Alvin Kamara. He's done so much for the franchise, all the 1,000-yard seasons, the touchdown record, all that stuff. And, that is to be respected. But I don't think there's as much like pettiness, emotion, like stuff like that involved in this situation as people think. I think Kellen Moore and Mickey Loomis both are just trying to make the right football decision. And
Mhm.
Kellen Moore may feel like he can build a really good team, a really good offense without Alvin Kamara, and they can allocate those resources elsewhere, right? And this reminds me, Aaron, actually a little bit of Alvin Kamara's rookie year, because if you think back to 2017, the Saints had just signed Adrian Peterson, and
Mhm.
he was going to, come here, help out Drew Brees, be a factor, but he ended up not even making the team because the Saints just drafted this third round rookie out of Tennessee, Alvin Kamara, who, took over that position and was really effective. And the Saints
Mhm.
obviously didn't have to pay Adrian Peterson. So I don't think this is lip service by Kellen Moore. I think he really is evaluating his roster. He's looking at guys like Devin Neal and Estime, who had a great finish to the season last year. And he's thinking, can we plug one of these guys in behind Travis Etienne instead of Alvin Kamara and save some money? And again, with all Alvin's done, I understand why that makes fans emotional, but I understand what Kellen Moore and Mickey Loomis are doing here. I think they're just doing their due diligence. And I don't think, while I think the Saints are better with Alvin Kamara on the team in
Mhm.
2026, Aaron, I don't think it's a bad thing that Mickey Loomis, Kellen Moore are both just trying to do their due diligence.
There are a couple things at play when it comes to running back Alvin Kamara. His history here, the fact that the fans absolutely do love him. And you heard Loomis say they have earned the right to self-determination in regards to Cam Jordan and Taysom Hill. And I think the same can be applied to Alvin Kamara. He can decide if this is the right fit for him. He has said he wants to come back. He says he wants to play here. So then on the flip side, Loomis has to decide with a new head coach and a new system that you're running. Kellen Moore definitely has given Alvin Kamara his flowers. He has said that he has been a great player here, but it is a new era for the Saints. You have a new head coach. He doesn't have the same emotional ties to some of these players that the previous regime did. So it's easier for him to look at it from an X's and O's standpoint. Does AK fit in with what we're trying to do here? Then financially, it's up to Loomis to decide if that does work in terms of what the salary cap looks like. And he said the roster resource management was the terms that he used. There are a few things that you got to decide financially and then schematically. What is it going to look like? And then you got to factor in the fact that Alvin Kamara is getting a little bit older as well. And it is a league that is based on a lot of what have you done for me lately? And last year, AK had the lowest average yards per game and yards per carry in his 9-year career. He was injured for 7 games to end the season. That's tough. You don't want to let somebody that's such a legend like AK just walk or have it be a sour ending here. But you do have to take all of those things into consideration. How he fits into Kellen Moore's system financially, does it make sense? And is the production still going to be there in comparison to what you do have on the roster?
And for what it's worth, before we move on here, I do think that, Aaron, I do think the Saints are a better team in 2026 with Alvin Kamara on the team. And he may not be the AK 47 of old, right? Like
Mhm.
breaking tackles and trucking Luke Kuechly on the goal line on 4th and goal and stuff like that. But I think he can be serviceable. And you saw it towards the end of last year. He may not have these 100-yard games, but in the games that he did play in those winning streaks, he got the tough yards. He got the swing passes on 3rd and 3 to move the chains. I feel like he can contribute in that role behind Travis Etienne. And clearly all that is
Mhm.
still up in the air. I don't think Alvin knows what his future holds. Most of us don't know what his future holds. And he's going to have to prove himself to an extent. Maybe that means he has to actually show up to OTAs. He's away from the facility most of the offseason, which the past
Mhm.
regime was okay with. But again, this is a new regime. So I'm really looking forward to the next couple of weeks and what happens, because clearly they're still making these decisions. But for football reasons, not for emotional reasons, I hope he's still on the Saints, because I think the Saints would be a better offense, a better football team with Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, I think it would be huge just from a leadership standpoint as well to still have him in the building. And he has mentioned over the past couple seasons he's happy to have some young guys in the building. They can take some of those reps. He doesn't want to always be the one out there laying his body on the line. And I do want to say that the way that we saw the offensive line perform last year also can affect how good your run game is and the opportunities that you have there. So as we saw injuries pile up on the O line last year, I mean that is going to change things for AK as well. And that was something that they really focused in on during the offseason. So I think in general, they're set up better. The Saints are to have a better run game and for AK to have more success in year 2 in Kellen Moore's system.
Agreed. I think statistically, he'd be a lot better than last season. And my
Mhm.
partner on the Spanish broadcast, Juan Carlos Ramos, you know him. He has a
Mhm.
great saying when it comes to Kamara. He said it a lot last year that Alvin Kamara llegó a la guerra sin espada. That means Alvin Kamara went to the battle without a sword. Like his offensive line's not blocking, right? There's nothing he could do. So
Yeah.
that conversation will continue. We'll see if Alvin Kamara's career in New Orleans continues. That being said, Aaron, let's talk some Taysom Hill here.
Yeah.
Like Mickey said in that soundbite, he's letting him take his time. He's earned the right to kind of make his decision, which probably involves, am I going to play for any team? Am I going to retire? Taysom is probably still making that determination. But he also said there's not a contract offer on the table for him right now. And this is just my personal opinion, Aaron. You can come back with what you think, but I think the Saints have gotten the best out of Taysom Hill. Absolute legend, a unique player, reminds you of like Jim Thorpe and like a really unique style of player.
Mhm.
But with his style of play being so physical, I think he's just taken so many hits. He's sustained so many injuries that he's not the same Taysom Hill anymore, even in short yardage situations, because he adapted his game. And I think the Saints were more using him for those situations, 3rd and short, 4th and short. But last year, even that wasn't working very well. So while Taysom, I think, deserves to be revered, he's a Saints legend. He's a Saints Hall of Famer, in my opinion. I think the Saints might be better on moving on from him, but just my opinion. What are your thoughts?
Taysom Hill is a true Swiss Army knife. He can do a little bit of everything. When I would try to talk to him at the facility, he was always in a different position group meeting. And he spent most of his time with the quarterbacks because he was mentoring the quarterbacks. Tyler Shough last season, Shough talked about this yesterday, how instrumental he was to helping Shough transition from the collegiate game to the NFL, everything that's thrown at you, understanding the play calling and what needs to happen and the speed of the game. Taysom is a brilliant football mind, and that's why he was so successful in so many areas, special teams, as a tight end, as a halfback, like whatever, wherever you wanted to put him on the field, he could play. I go back to the end of last season, the last home game in the Dome, and how emotional Taysom Hill was speaking to the media. There were tears in his eyes. I think he was taking in that moment as this is potentially the last game that I will ever play here in the Superdome. And it did mean a lot to him. He has dealt with 3 major knee injuries now. Coming back from that at his age is going to be tough. I don't know if you saw, but it's out there on Twitter today, X, formerly Twitter, that he has put his house on the market in Metairie. So I think the page is turning for Taysom Hill.
It's sad, but at the same time, it would be less sad not seeing him on another team, like in a Denver Broncos jersey
Yeah.
or something like that. Appropriate that he would retire with the Saints. And I'm glad you brought up the last game because
Yeah.
Taysom was kind of treating it like a going away party, like a farewell. Cam Jordan was not. And the fact that a lot of people were kind of implying that seemed to anger Cam Jordan a little bit. And I want your thoughts on this situation, Aaron, because it's interesting to me. I'm a little bit surprised he doesn't seem to have as much demand from other teams, despite that
Mhm.
10 plus sack season last year. And the Saints have been very honest that they've given him a number. He has not accepted the offer. And for that reason, he is still not on a team. I think this ends with him in New Orleans. And the same way we were just talking about with Alvin Kamara, I think the defense is so much better with Cam Jordan in the building, not just because of his production, not just because of his potential sacks that he's going to continue to get, but also because of his leadership, being the veteran guy in that room, pushing a lot of the young guys like Granderson and Chase Young. And with Taysom Hill, I think it ends with him retiring. But with Cam Jordan, ultimately, I think it ends with him coming back for another season with the New Orleans Saints. You heard Mickey talk about it. What are your thoughts on Cam Jordan's situation?
It was really interesting walking into the locker room for rookie minicamp and seeing Cam Jordan's locker completely cleared out and Taysom Hill's as well, but nobody had moved into those spots. The other spots from former players that aren't under contract anymore, they've been taken on by some of the rookies that were here, some of the undrafted free agents, the tryout guys were, had moved in to camp out for a couple days, but they have not touched Cam's. While it is clean, it is still there in the corner, the double lockers that he took over. And I think they're holding that spot for him for a reason. They want to make sure that when he does come back, if he does come back, that he can slide right back into where he was. He's going to be that leader on the defensive line, that anchor there. And he wants to play. I think that's the caveat. The biggest thing here is that he feels like he can. He showed that he could last year. And he wants to not only be back in the Saints locker room, but he wants to contribute. And I think when you look at the defensive line depth, especially those ends there, you have Chase Young, you have Carl Granderson, but you don't know what Tyree Wilson, Anthony Jennings is going to be. So does it make sense to have Cam Jordan slide in there as your first rotational player off the bench? Again, he has to accept that role, maybe a few less snaps. I would hate to not see him end his career here in New Orleans.
Same. Well said. And ultimately, I think he will. Like you said, might have to share some snaps with some of those guys, might have a reduced role, but ultimately, I think Cam Jordan is back in New Orleans. We'll see what happens here. Let's talk a little bit about Tyler Shough and what he had to say yesterday. Erin, it was the first time he talked to the media as a whole. He's gone on some shows and stuff like that, but the first time he talked to local reporters here in New Orleans at the Saints Hall of Fame golf tournament, he had some interesting stuff to say about comfortability in Kellen Moore's offense. And this is what he had to say about his second year with his head coach for the Saints.
Yeah, I think it's just so much more comfortability. You're going into Kellen's offense year two. We're being able to kind of really focus on what we want to focus on. The sense of urgency, I think, is the biggest thing that I've been focusing on, and for the whole unit. And then also just, I think everybody is just, we're having fun. We're having fun putting in the work.
What's the most valuable thing you've been able to do with Kellen February to May, and the other offensive coaches?
I think it's really sit down and kind of evaluate the film from last year and kind of tweak what we may call certain things, and then also kind of tailor it to, how we're trying to attack defenses this year. And so that was really cool to see throughout this install process and OTAs in phase two is I think there was a self-evaluation from, my part and what I can work on footwork wise and setting the pocket, and then also for offensively and how we can kind of get better there.
We have talked about the players coach that head coach Kellen Moore is, and the fact that he's sitting down with his quarterback. I mean, Tyler Shough has been in there every single day, and they are sitting there together. And it sounds like Moore is asking him, what can I do better? You want to change how this play is called? Okay, let's do that. Let's make you more comfortable. What will it take for both of us to take that next step with this offense next year, working in tandem? And I think that's really cool, that relationship, especially with Moore's background as a quarterback and the success that he has had in that position, that role. The other thing that stood out to me was the fact that Shough said sense of urgency. We talked about the schedule last week. It does not start easy. He is like, we need to get on the same page. We need to be ready to go from jump, and we better get on that page quickly so we can make the most out of our offseason programming going into phase 3 here and really hit the ground running to start the season.
You said it, man. I think that this time of year is so important for him because last year when he was coming in, not only was he a rookie learning how to be a professional in the NFL, but technically he was in a position battle. And Kellen Moore talked yesterday about Tyler Shough taking every single first team rep. So not only does he have the experience from last year, but he has the comfortability of knowing he's going to be the starter playing for the same head coach, for the same play caller. That familiarity, Erin, I think goes a long way. And I don't think what he's saying about watching the film, making improvements is lip service, because
Yeah.
Tyler Shough had such a good rookie season. What he did down the stretch in some of these games was so impressive. But to be honest with you, Aaron, a lot of it was improvising. He was throwing
Mhm.
to a lot of undrafted free agent wide receivers. He was having to make things happen when the pocket broke down. And it's all very encouraging. But to your point, I'd like to see him have a little bit more command, a little bit more sureness, I guess, in what he's doing, especially against those first two opponents on the road in the Baltimore Ravens and the Detroit Lions. So I think this time of year, very, very important and ultimately very beneficial for Tyler Shough.
It's all about chemistry, and they're gonna start getting that opportunity to develop the chemistry with the rookies, and one Jordan Tyson coming up soon as well. Oscar Delp has been somebody that's been talked about a lot in the offense. They have a lot of new weapons, not only rookies, but free agents that have come in. So it's gonna be really interesting to see who shows up, first of all, and how quickly they can start to come together early in the offseason process here.
So when I started this podcast a few months ago, Aaron, I had a little analogy when it came to the Saints and their need for wide receivers. And I need to come up with a better one probably, but going into this all season, the Saints needed wide receivers like burgers need cheese. Like it was a must, right? They really needed it. And you're
Unless
gonna
you're lactose intolerant, but anyways.
Good to know. Good to know going forward. But you're going to learn doing this show with me that I'm a huge fan of Chris Olave. I
Yeah,
really don't understand a lot of the discourse, especially amongst Saints fans, saying that he's injury prone. He only played less than 15 games in one season when he had all those injury problems, and his production is there, like 1,000-yard season after 1,000-yard season. I think people are really overthinking it when it comes to Chris Olave. But even if you don't think he's a quote unquote number one, the Saints drafted Jordan Tyson now to pair with him. And we know Saints fans are really excited, and Tyler Shough is very excited to play with him as well. This is the first time he actually talked about sharing the field, sharing an offense with Jordan Tyson. And he discussed it at the Saints Hall of Fame golf tournament yesterday. And this is what Tyler Shough had to say about his newest weapon.
I think his body control and his separation is what stands out to me. I think he's an elite separator, and then also his hands have been really exciting to see kind of close up now. He's so sure-handed. He's got this great kind of feel whenever he's very friendly to the quarterback, I would say. And then obviously his big playability is what shows up all over tape. So, we're still very early on in the process. And I think more than anything, just getting on the same page with the playbook, and he's doing a really good job of that. I think he's really smart. So I'm excited to kind of keep going with him.
Tyson is going to be really fun to watch this season as he continues to ramp up. Head coach Kellen Moore said that is where he's at. We're trying to evaluate his body, his injury history, make sure he's ready to go in a full capacity. As the offseason program goes on, he's going to participate in OTAs, but Moore did say yesterday that it's going to be a ramp up process to see how much. I love hearing people talk about this player because everybody has given glowing remarks on Jordan Tyson and what he can do for this offense. And I think that the person who should be most excited about it, not even Tyler Shough, should be Chris Olave, because now Olave has a true 1-2 punch next to him, and that's only going to make things easier for him. He had so much of the defensive focus last season because of who was on the field or who wasn't. And this is going to help him have more opportunity. It's going to be fun to watch those two play together.
Yeah, and we'll talk in future episodes about kind of our biggest concerns and what we're most optimistic about. I don't know
Mhm.
if optimistic is the word, but I'm just really excited to watch these receivers, Aaron. In a
Yeah.
world where Chris Olave and Jordan Tyson both stay healthy, I think this is going to be a deadly offense. And I think Bryce Lance is an interesting player as well. I know he came
Mhm.
out of a small school. I feel like he needs to improve his conditioning a little bit to compete on the NFL level, hit the weight room and stuff like that. But I'm really impressed by the play style. I'm really impressed by the numbers he put up at North Dakota State, who
Yeah.
doesn't throw the ball very much, by the way, but he was still putting up 1,000-yard season after 1,000-yard season. So in summary, Aaron, I think Kellen Moore, Mickey Loomis, they listened to this podcast and they went and addressed wide receiver. And Saints fans should be excited about it.
Yeah, it was definitely something that needed to be addressed. And you go out and you get, I think, the best wide receiver in the draft, and then you add a few more. I think even Barian Brown, who comes in from LSU, is going to be an interesting player to follow this offseason.
Yes, and could help on special teams. They've definitely
Right.
addressed that as well. So interesting words yesterday from Tyler Shough, from Mickey Loomis. That's what they had to say at the Saints Hall of Fame golf tournament yesterday, and me and Aaron's thoughts on what they had to say. With that being said, Aaron, we're getting towards the end of the episode here. Let's have our social media segment. What's happening on Saints Twitter? We discuss this during every show. And obviously, a lot of what's happening on Saints Twitter is conversation around these topics. Cam
Yeah.
Jordan. I'm seeing a lot of Taysom Hill highlight packages. One of my favorite players to ever broadcast games for. I thought your breakdown was really good. Just a very unique player, somebody willing to do anything for the team. So a lot of that is going on social media. But one thing that I found interesting was today's date, Aaron. Today is actually one Archie Manning's birthday. He is
Hmm.
turning 77 years old. Shout out to him. I know he's doing some of the media rounds in New Orleans today, including on the radio. But this is somebody who deserves to be revered. And you and I came up in a little bit of the glory age of the Saints, Drew Brees, and now they're trying to continue with the new era, Kellen Moore and Tyler Shough. But Archie Manning was a true pioneer of this franchise. And unfortunately, the team success wasn't there, but his individual stats, very, very impressive. And then talking to people that saw him play, I told you in the last episode, my Uncle Juan was the original Spanish play-by-play voice of the Saints, and he's very complimentary of Archie Manning. A key theme when discussing him, Aaron, is he ran for his life. He didn't have the best offensive
Yes.
lines, but he was still fun to watch. He made things happen. So for our social media segment today, I thought we'd shout out Archie Manning on his 77th birthday.
He was such a staple for this franchise and coming in and trying to lead the team the best that he could. But the fact that he's also stayed in New Orleans and given it to this community, he obviously has his sports bar downtown. You can see him there frequently. He does the passing academy. He does still pour into the game. And he has had conversations with Tyler Shough. He's talked to any of the Saints players that have reached out. I've gotten a chance to talk to him on a number of occasions, and he is always so kind and so willing to answer any questions, give his advice. He keeps up with the team still, very much so. And I just think he's been a huge positive for this franchise from the moment that he was drafted.
Yeah, good point about the community service. He's done
Mhm.
so much for New Orleans, opening schools and hospitals and things like that. Not somebody who just loves the Saints, the team that he played for, but loves the city as well. So appropriate that we shouted out Archie Manning on his 77th birthday here today. Before we wrap up, any final thoughts here, Aaron? Great job today. I thought we hit a lot of good stuff. The Alvin Kamara, Cam Jordan stuff is really interesting. I like to
Yeah.
have that to talk about the next couple of weeks. But
Mhm.
any final thoughts before we wrap up today's show?
It was good to get some more information on the situation. It's something that you hope does wrap itself up soon because you don't want it to be a distraction leading into the season. And you want to know who is on the field or not on the field this upcoming year as you're starting to really install what that offense is going to look like, the personnel, and then defensively as well. So we'll definitely continue to talk about this as the weeks go on here and we get ready to get back on the field for the first set of OTAs.
Great work today, Aaron. I will talk to you again soon. We have some really exciting stuff coming up on the show. I know we have some future guests that we're cooking up.
Mhm.
Looking forward to that coming up. And obviously, we're getting closer and closer to the season. Eventually, we'll talk about actual football games, Aaron. So, really looking forward to that. As we wrap up, don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. Shout out to those of you who have written really nice reviews. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Amazon, and now on YouTube. Shout out to Erin for all her work with the video production, making us look really good. So follow us on YouTube, find us audio-wise wherever you get your podcasts, and we will talk to y'all soon. For Erin Summers, I am Mario Jerez. This has been Bleav in Saints. Who dat?